always.
Well, from across the continent, back here on the Pearl of Africa, one of the most talked about events, well, we can say it's the 90 days of oil and mining. And it's been gracing our television, even other media, including the social media, trying to inform you, Ugandans and the stakeholders, on the benefits or the vast opportunities that surrounding the oil development phase. And we're back here on the breakfast meeting. My name is Mebo Twegumiezake. We do thank you so much for joining us this morning. And this time around, we want to try to understand, as much as you're going to benefit from the local content throughout the oil development phase, well, we need to think of the movement of the tons of cargo that is going to be moving across the borders and to the oil region. And that is where our conversation is. How is Uganda ready in terms of that kind of support when we're talking about the transportation and so much more? That is where I bring in these two gentlemen. Well, there's Engineer Isaac Wani. We do appreciate you for coming. He's the Director, Network Planning and Engineering from the Uganda National Roads Authority. That's UNRA.
Thank you, Weber.
Okay. And then on this side, you're welcome, Stephen Wakasenza, Chief Commercial Officer, Uganda Railway Corporation, also URC.
Good morning. Welcome.
Okay, and to remind you again, our topic this morning is infrastructure readiness to support the oil and mining. To emphasize on this, it's the 90 days of oil and mining. And if you're watching right now, this campaign has presented vast opportunities for you and the entire country to make sure that you exploit it in terms of local content. So if I should start off with you from UNRA, the engineer Isaac Wani, thinking of the cargo that will actually have to be transported to the oil region, and we need to speak of the critical roads that are probably under construction. Maybe if we should start from what those critical roads are and guide us into the conversation that we're going to have.
Yeah, thank you, Bebo, and good morning, viewers. The critical oil roads are basically the roads that were identified by the oil partners that are very critical to facilitate the delivery of construction materials, construction equipment, and the equipment that will be used in one, extraction of the oil from the well sites, the refinery, and also the pipeline needs to be serviced. The construction materials need to be delivered. Now, in our National Development Plan 2, we set out to construct roads basically to access the oil region in general. But these roads, as you may be aware, in 2016 end, the government together with the oil partners under the Lake Albert Basin Development Committee set out a target to achieve the first oil by 2020. And in line with that, we therefore got a directive from Cabinet to implement these roads, and that was the end of 2016. And that means we basically had like 3 financial years to complete the construction of these roads, so that logistics, in terms of movement of logistics for construction and construction equipment, could reach those sites. Now, this was a very huge uphill task for the authority, but thanks to the reforms that were brought in UNRA in 2015, where we built an in-house capacity of engineers to do project preparation, design, feasibility studies, environment and social safeguard preparation of RAP in-house, we were able to reduce the time for project preparation and design and preliminary design of these projects. We also were able to fast-track the procurement process, and by 2018, some of these contracts were already signed, and we commissioned construction. Now, currently, these projects are at about 55% average completion. We knew that we would not be able to complete these projects within that very tight timeline of 3 years. And therefore, we had to focus on the critical bottleneck sections which would get cut off for these construction materials not to reach those points that they're supposed to reach. So we basically focused on the bottleneck sections like the escarpment. For those who come from Bulisa area, we were able to cut it down and it's now passable. We focused on the bridges. We focused on the swamps to improve them and some bridge locations. By December, we'll be having a very brand new bridge across Para. It will be ready for commissioning by that time. So that's the story of the critical oil roads. Now, the other roads which provided access to the general oil region are also about, some of them are complete. You have this road from Uwende to Kagadi, from Kenjojo, right up to Kaboya. All those ones are due for completion. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, you know, as Ugandans, we believe after seeing. Right now, we might not be able to see, and probably the communities there already seeing these roads, but I was thinking, we'll mention some of these roads so that our imagination can carry us there to be able to see or even imagine what they look like at 50% completion.
Yeah, at 50% completion, if you, for those who come from Bulisa, Hoima up to Wanseko, like I indicated, the escarpment has been cut and the road has been, you know, improved in those areas. There are some bridges which have been constructed, like Waiga along that road. And then we have, of course, the Para Bridge, like I said, it's already been, it's almost due for commissioning, for completion by end of this year here. Okay. Yeah.
So maybe I should bring in Mr. Wakasenza and ask if there are any railway lines that are also critical in this oil development phase as we continue to hope for the standard gauge railway.
Thank you, Nebo. Good morning, viewers. For starters, I would like to say that all railway lines are critical, and we're already in the oil business. In December 2019, we started haulage of cargo of oil fuel from Kisumu to Kampala and Port Bell. We have so far moved 23 million liters of diesel using that route. But going back to the point and the critical lines, for us to achieve that, we had to work on the Kampala-Port Bell line. That was rehabilitated, and that was 2 years ago. And this year, during COVID, we rehabilitated the Jinja Pier line at a cost of around 500 million Uganda shillings, and it was done in-house by URC. That also was rehabilitated. What does that do? It connects, because the pipeline is through Tanzania, you find that across the lake, from Mwanza, we can bring cargo to Kampala, we can bring cargo to Port Bell, so that we can move that cargo up, going to the north. But that said, if you look at the critical lines, the Tororo-Gulu line is now underway. It was launched about 3 weeks ago by His Excellency the President. And that one will link the northern hemisphere of the country with the oil area. So the line is 375 kilometers from Tororo all the way to Gulu. And this is being done in conjunction with the EU, European Union. The total cost comes to around 47 million euros, and 21 million euros, 21.5 million euros are contributed by EU, and the rest by government. So that is a critical line to the oil development.
From URC on this side, and then from UNRWA, yeah, on the other. But remember, it's the oil development phase, and yes, one is thinking, how do you integrate as rail and roads? Probably I'll ask the same question to Isaac too, but probably maybe you should chip in on that, or actually you're working differently.
No, that is not possible. We are government organizations, and obviously this, you start from the planning phase. Originally, we used to have sector working planning, where you look at the sector, but we have moved to program-based planning, and all our projects are on the same list of infrastructure, transport infrastructure and services. So they are evaluated by the Ministry of Works and also approved by National Planning Authority. So this is in line with the National Development Plan, so that there is no duplication of projects, and the resources are going to sorting out the problems that the country is facing. So the integration is there. And my brother, engineer, we do meet at the ministry when we are deliberating on this project.
No bad blood.
No, no bad blood, but the financing is what we may talk about later on.
Want to make an addition on that?
Yeah, really an addition is that he's explained the integration at the sector level, but also at the project level we do work, because railways need to be serviced by roads. They deliver their goods to a railway station, but from a railway station they have to reach a destination. So at the agents and project level, we do integrate our plans such that we maintain the access roads to the railway stations, so that they can have access to national roads, to district roads, and then eventually to community access roads. But also when they are doing plans for their improvements, say for instance rehabilitation, because the railways have not been working, they will come to us and we give them data on the traffic that has been plying the roads.
Correct.
So it is based on this that will determine how many of those tons will shift to the railways. So there's that at planning at the agency level that we do. And for us as really roads, we think the railway should function so that we can have some of this load go onto the railway and we can relieve overload on the roads, basically.
So if we turn the conversation to minerals, since we're talking about the infrastructure, you find that some of these minerals are actually in deeply, remote areas, and we want to know if there are plans in place to actually develop access roads to those remote areas.
Yeah, in regard to minerals, the National Development Plan 3 has focused on mineral development as one of the programs. And the UNRA is a member, a participant in this program. So far, we've not yet received any request for critical roads that probably are supposed to lead to those mineral sites. But what we've done is that in our planning framework, in the multi-criteria, we pick up those regions that have mineral potential. Like Karamoja, it is still potential. We have not explored. I think they are supposed to explore so that they can determine what quantities are there that can be extracted. So we use that in the criteria, and in NDP 3, we have provided access to the mineral-rich regions to be accessed, so that those specific connections to the mineral points can be figured out when the developers or the partners identify and then they request that they need this specific support in terms of road infrastructure.
Well, I'm glad we already talked about. You wanted to make an addition to that?
When you look at minerals and, for example, minerals in the west of the country, there are plans for railway to connect Kampala-Kasese line. It was originally mineral-based, and this was even highlighted by His Excellency the President recently while visiting Gulu, that this is one of the lines that needs to be fixed. So that is in the pipeline on top of the roads that Engineer Wani has talked about.
Fortunately, we had the conversation on integration, and we know that the COVID-19 pandemic presented a lot of challenges, especially the issues that were at the Malaba-Busia, but at the same time also probably revealed more benefits when it comes to the multimodal system. So what do you have to say about that going forward and preparations for such challenges in future?
COVID is like an oxymoron. It has brought sweet bitterness in the whole transport sector. It basically emphasized the essential areas that need to be fixed. And rail came out prominently during this period of time. As rail, the interventions that we have put in place during the COVID period, for example, the accommodation of drivers at our ICD, what we looked at that the truck drivers had nowhere to park, for example, and we offered for Mukono ICD for an area to park. But it also affected us in the transport passenger service area. We had to stop that service majorly because we move very many people at one go. In a day, you may find that we have moved 4,000 people. But I'm glad to inform you that that also has been worked on. We started the service this week, and all the SOPs have been put in place. The SOPs, we are looking at the ones that the Ministry of Health has advised, but that does not remain to at the service level only. But it's also in the premises, the organization, that we are adhering to the SOPs. Now, when you look at freight, we are in discussion with the government on placing a container depot in Tororo, so that the delay that the customers are facing at Malaba, 7 days and more, this ICD will act as a drop point for containers, and then the containers will be brought inland. That's one area, and that it can be both on rail and road. So in conjunction with UNRWA, we are working on that facility in Tororo.
Any other alternatives in addition to, going forward, since the road sector was actually more affected by the pandemic?
Yeah, in terms of alternatives, what I can say is that the NDP3 now prioritizes multimodal transport development as a program. And indeed, the benefits for each transport mode, there are benefits and disadvantages. If you look at the water transport, it definitely needs to be developed because it is cheap, but not suitable for perishables. And that means that the low speeds cannot enable us to use them for those perishables. If you look at air, very fast, but a little bit expensive, and bulk cargo cannot. When you look at the roads, roads provide a little bit fast and less costly means of transporting goods, but over short distances. Say you are picking from, railway station and so on. But currently, roads are the dominant mode of transport in the country, and this is likely to continue to be so. I don't expect the share of road transport to reduce below 60% of freight and goods, and we therefore will still need to continue to invest in roads, because roads provide access, like I've said, to the railway stations, provide access to the ports, provide access to the airports. And that's why we are, as an entity, developing a 50-year plan for an expressway development master plan. This is going to form the backbone of the transport network, and we're going to have a new development corridors across the whole country. So I envisage investments in the road sector will continue into the future. Yeah.
Maybe you should also speak to, because the oil project presents itself with a lot of heavy work that actually does strain the roads, and being the most dominant, and looking at the timelines right now in the next 5 years, what can you say in terms of projection in achieving the paved roads, the tarmac?
In terms of projection and the expected heavy traffic as a result of the oil activities, we've had as a sector to plan and see how this heavy and bulky equipment can be delivered. And that's why you can see that there is an airport being constructed under the Ministry of Works, CAA. There are roads being constructed. So different materials and equipment will be delivered using the suitable means of transport for them to reach the location where they're supposed to be. But yes, according to the projections from the Ministry of Energy, we expect really very huge and heavy bulky raw materials and equipment to be delivered, and we'll assess the impact, especially on the structures, bridge structures, after these construction materials have been delivered. And that would mean that we may need to go into very heavy rehabilitation if indeed the projections that they gave us in terms of the equipment materialize. There will be very serious damage both to the roads and the pavement, and that would require reconstruction after delivery of these materials.
So when we...
On the same, and looking at rail, obviously for rail to get to the sea, we have two accesses. We have Mombasa and the Assam port. There has been a lot of development of the railway infrastructure on the Tanzanian side. 80% of the meter gauge railway was rehabilitated, and right now they are doing a standard gauge railway as well. That means you can move cargo from Dar es Salaam, Dodoma, Mwanza, over the lake using our vessel, MV Kawa, and MV Umoja for Tanzania, to bring the cargo to Port Bell or Jinja. So that route also, given the load of cargo, over 500,000 metric tons of cargo will be moving into the country. So that load, not all of it will be on roads. It has to be allocated. So rail is also doing the same planning. The same applies to Mombasa. We move cargo from Mombasa, Nairobi, Malaba to Kampala and Tororo. So that can also give relief and take part of this weight off the roads. That's what we are looking at as we wait for the Tororo-Gulu line to come into play.
And maybe the viewers are also thinking it, because I'm thinking it, the already existing rail now.
Yes.
Maybe this could be a silver lining for a refurbishment of what already exists, since a lot in terms of equipment is coming in for these new lines in particular, plus any hope for government funding it?
No, actually, that is very, it's already in place. In place, actually. As I highlighted, Tanzanian government, Kenyan government are working on the railway lines, meter gauge and standard gauge. But as Uganda, we have major projects that are underway. For example, the rehabilitating of Malaba-Kampala line, which is a meter gauge, is already ongoing. The contractor is arranging resources and will start rehabilitating the 251 kilometers. Then the Tororo-Gulu, which I've already talked about, 375 kilometers, the contractor is on ground. And that's why we had the launch 3 weeks ago with His Excellency the President. So that is already ongoing and fixing the meter gauge as we speak. Meter gauge is the current railway line that we are using. It's a meter wide, that's why it's called meter gauge. There is always a discussion of standard gauge. Standard gauge is much more wider. So meter gauge is like an elf if you're looking at a pickup truck. And the standard gauge is a maguru kumi. So if you cut it across, you find it's wider, the maguru kumi takes more load. That is the arrangement. But there is rehabilitation ongoing of the current meter gauge line.
So maybe it gives us an opportunity to also talk about the road fund and the extent to which it's actually helping to improve road maintenance. Mr. Wani.
Yes, the road fund is an agency of government, the Uganda Road Fund, created by an act of parliament. Now they are mandated to finance routine and periodic maintenance of only public roads, because in Uganda we have two categories. There are public roads, and then there are private roads. Now, UNRA, as an agency, benefits from the funding from the Uganda Road Fund. Now, all our road maintenance activities, ferry services for those who are serviced by who use our ferries, and the axle load control, those are the way bridges to check vehicles which are overloaded using our roads. All are financed under the Uganda Road Fund. Yeah, but I must add here that the Uganda Road Fund actually receives very inadequate funds to finance all these maintenance activities, both on the national roads, the district roads, the urban roads, and the community access roads. The money is really not sufficient. That's why most of the roads go unattended to, just because these maintenance funds from the road fund is very, very limited and inadequate.
So as we conclude and emphasize...
What about the railroads?
Yeah, railroads.
There are also railroads.
Okay, so as we conclude, emphasizing that yes, Uganda is ready infrastructure-wise, of course, and the oil development phase continues, what would be your parting shots?
Yeah, my parting shots is that the roads are not going to be a hindrance to the delivery of oil at whatever point that is required. Like I've indicated, we've already dealt with the bottlenecks. Even if part of the sections are not having the tarmac on it, the trucks and the construction equipment can be delivered to those oil production points and even to the refinery. So basically, the roads can be used the way they are to deliver the construction materials as far as this oil program is concerned.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the Chamber for organizing this session. It's very informative to the public. And also for Uganda Railways, we are put in place measures to support the oil and mining sector. I'm glad to inform the public that government is committed to rehabilitating the Tororo-Gulu line. It has already committed funds, 9.2 billion Uganda shillings to that cause. That is counterpart funding. And there will be external funding also close to 37 billion Uganda shillings. So with what is already happening with the construction underway, we are certain that in a period by 2024, the line will be up and running, and it will help with this project as well.
And that has actually presented opportunities for Ugandans to get jobs and work. And
correct.
Yeah.
That whole process has 4 stations to be rehabilitated. With that and the construction of the line, that means materials have to be procured. Jobs, a number of jobs are going to be available.
Ugandan companies get contracts?
Correct. Ugandan companies get contract. And through the construction, the civil works, the buildings of the stations, we will see a lot of benefit to the economy at the end of the day. Yes.
Well, we do appreciate you so much for being part of this conversation and enlightening us. If you're just joining in, well, we're having this conversation with Engineer Isaac Wani. He's the Director, Network Planning and Engineering from Uganda National Roads Authority. That is UNRA. We do appreciate you for being part of the breakfast meeting.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and Stephen Wakasenza, the Chief Commercial Officer, Uganda Railways Corporation, URC.
Thank you.
Well,
and I would like to tell the public, and especially the people, the passengers who use the railway service, that the service is back. We are running it between Namamve and Kampala, but we are observing the SOPs. So we are moving less numbers, around 2,000 per day. And you have to come with the mask, and you'll have to sanitize to use the service. Yes, it's back and it's operational.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, as we conclude, my name is Mebo Twegumiezake. Thank you so much for being part of NBS breakfast meeting, and the 90 days of oil and mining continue. Well, yesterday, unfortunately, still a gloomy day it is after we lost prominent political analyst, Dr. A.A. Kalisa, and right now we want to take you to Chibuli Muslim Mosque, where there's a send-off prayer for him. Well, we'll be watching that after a short break.